found the right people, like put a wall up on negativity. With the right people, you're able to develop and fine tune the mission and vision, because you're going to have to share this with a lot of people. If you build a business, unless you're the only customer for the business that you're building, you're going to have to share it, sell it, and get some form of support. You're going to fail putting two chemicals together to get to the right formula, because it doesn't exist yet. So you got to keep mixing them. So that's the way I look at things. Yeah. It's all data, right? So that it doesn't necessarily take the emotion completely out of it, because you want to be right away, and you might not be, but it definitely helps frame the mindset of what you need to put together to go into these things. So I look at it much like a science experiment. Because of the way that the ecosystem is manipulated, and because of the old style of 4:00 in the morning television commercials that scare people into these programs, the customer acquisition costs were wildly expensive. So we were like, okay, if we built a digital brand that speaks to digital natives, that is in the right culture, that they're not allergic. And think about it, it's common sense when you look back, but millennials and under, they don't even like to call their significant others on the telephone. Why would they want to call your company? They want an app, right? They want to feel connected. Just like they don't want to call a car company to pick them up.
You're just eliminating a lot of the friction and by having this app.
Yeah, but it's not just about the friction. It is. It's seamless. We built all the technology that automates something that is completely new in the ecosystem. Nobody's automated this for users and so on and so forth. So we had to build a tech stack to be able to support that. But more than anything else, we're showing people that you don't need to be manipulated. You don't need a ton of money to get help. It's easy. It's simple. Here it is in app form. You're used to doing this with every part of your life. Now have it going through this situation. And that cultural effect of that translates to customer acquisition costs being so low.
Wow. Hi, I'm Matt Levenhagen, founder of Unified Web Design, Unified Plugins, and your host of the Builders Podcast. Here on The Builders, our goal is to uncover the first principles behind building businesses, products, and services. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe or follow wherever you're listening. And if you find value in our content, a like, share, or review is always appreciated. Let's dive in and explore the roots of innovation and progress together. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another The Builders. Today, we are joined by Jason Saltzman. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Thanks for having me, Matt. Excited to talk to you.
So Jason is the founder of Relief, which is a debt management platform. And I believe it's first to market of its kind. It's basically you help people that have fallen behind on bills or that type of thing. So whatever you're doing there is unique. So we'll probably talk about that today. You also, for over a decade, have helped mentor startups or founders. So you've done a lot for the business community, which is awesome. Before we dive in, so we're going to talk about your actual product and how you built things and the building process and all that. But before we do that, right before we hit record, there was something you wanted to speak to. We were talking about just diving in to this without thinking.
No, it's interesting because, what we were talking about was, thanks for having me, Matt. I'm excited to do this conversation with you. I've listened to a few of your shows, and I think it's a really great thing that you're doing. I think it's nice to have authentic conversations with people that are doing cool shit. So I'm happy to be. Can I say shit, by the way?
Yeah, go for it.
All right.
Yeah.
You can always bleep it out. All right. But a lot of times
people are too clean here. We need to dirty the waters a little bit.
I think what we were talking about was that, preemptively when you get into some conversations, it's very common to get in your head and to have this whole idea about what something's going to look like, and that can kind of bring on a level of anxiety or anticipation. And it could potentially affect the outcome, what I've noticed. Yeah. And that across the board, we were talking about it in relation to this podcast, but I'm currently on through our next round of funding for the business, which I'll talk about in a few. And I get into meetings with venture capitalists, and I've done it 1,000 times, and I've raised over $100 million in my career. And not to brag about it, just to say that, you know, with all this experience, you think that anxiety goes away, but it just doesn't, you know?
Right.
So like, I was just going to say, like, it's an interesting thing. Like, I'm sure people out there that are listening to this, because we've both experienced this ourselves, have a level of that anxiety before they get into any conversation. And that could be a blocker, you know, for you to do the things you want to do, because that anxiety becomes so great. And what I've learned to do, which is what I was going to tell you before, which is like really understand two key elements. Number one, we're all going to die, right? Nothing we do right now really matters, right? Really matters. Like, you're basically a tick on an elephant's ass, right? And that shrinkage of sort of like perspective, and that mindset gives me the ability to be like, I could do whatever I want. Like, why do I have anxiety? Like, we're going to be dust. Might as well make a moment now, like do it now, and the second thing is I focus on you, like having a meaningful connection. Like, Matt, you approached me. We connected on software that brings people together for podcasts. And I looked at some of the stuff you did, and I was like, you know what? I really want to talk to him. So I want to make the best out of this for you, whoever's listening right now. And that sort of like just gets me going. I think that's a good business lesson. You know, that literally has fundamentally helped me with my business. That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you for adding that dash of advice. And thoughts. No, that's good. Yeah. Like I said, you just do it. Just go in. Don't get in your head. Yeah. You know, one of the things, like, the reason what sparked this was, you know, sometimes before a podcast is going to start and I'm talking to somebody amazing that's done a lot in the world, and it could be a little intimidating. It might be. But at the same time, I've done this over 200 times, and every single time I've hit record, it's been fine. It's always turned out okay. It's always smooth. And it's the same way with getting on a client call or something like that. Like, you got to believe in yourself and know what you know your stuff. Just do it. Don't even wait till the last second to get on that call, and just don't even think about it. Just work on something, get in that call. You'll be fine. Yeah. Let it go. Let it flow. And the other thing is, like, these people that you're interviewing might have done really cool things, but so are you. Like, you're in that bucket. You know, you threw yourself into that bucket. You're doing something that not everybody does. You're reaching out to people. You have no idea who they are. You're inviting them for an authentic conversation. So you're being innovative, just like the other people, regardless of like how much money somebody's made or what awards or accolades they've received in their life. You know, that's just a byproduct of their experiences. We can't hold anybody on a pedestal. Like, you're the guy. People should be afraid to speak to you. Anyway, let's fucking go.
Hopefully
let's
I
go.
make people feel.
Let's go.
I always tell people, if you're going to be on the first podcast with anybody, be on a podcast with me, because I'm laid back. It'll be fine. Yeah. You don't have to worry about me.
I think that's great.
No, it's awesome. So, appreciate that. So let's talk a little bit about you. Let's talk about what you're doing in the world. Like, how did you, maybe just tell your story a little bit of background, and how you landed, developing relief and giving people relief in the world from their debts, and how to tell us a little bit about that story. Yeah. So, how much time we got, Matt? How far you want me to go back? No. So, I've been in the game for a while. You know, when I first was self-employed, 20 plus years ago, you know, there wasn't this like startup craze to start a business. It wasn't the normal thing to do. You know, when I brought home my first check, my parents thought I was a drug dealer. You know, they're like, what is this? You know, you're not a doctor. You're not a lawyer. Like, you know, how are you making all this money? It wasn't like, oh, I started a business. It was kind of unheard of, right? So I started very early, right out of high school. I built my first business.
I was introduced to the debt relief ecosystem, and back then, it was like a boiler room set up to sell people debt servicing. So if you fell behind on your debt, you would, fill out something, on the internet, or you would see a television commercial, telling you that, that you could save money on your debt, and you would call in and, we would capture that information and walk you through the process of what these programs are like to get you out of debt. And the industry made a lot of money, and, it helped a lot of people, but along with a simple business model becomes a lot of bad actors, right? So debt relief became sort of like an ugly space to be part of. And it was really difficult to differentiate yourself as much as you did, like getting all your government licensing and being very educational. So I leaned onto that side of it, but I hated the business model. I hated that we had to charge consumers an extraordinary amount of money when they already showed that they don't have any money, right? So it pissed me off. And during my experiences, I was enamored by the simplicity of solutions for people. So I started to work with a partner of mine on building automated systems that could take something complicated and make it very simple. And we built a business out of reducing the friction in paperwork. And we actually got really good at it. We started to work on government compliance because back then in the early 2000s, a lot of the things that were happening in the debt ecosystem were like predicated on government programs. Like, for instance, Obama had, the HAMP program, the Home Affordable Modification Program. But nobody knew how to fill out this paperwork. So we made very simple processes. We got really good at it. And that actually became a whole business. That business went into the GovTech space. It was a company called Seamless Docs. And we grew it and exited the company a few years ago to a larger GovTech company. And that was sort of like my experience with venture, early experience in raising capital, building a tech company, building a tech ecosystem. An offshoot of what happened with my career was I got into this whole idea of sharing founder stories with other founders that were looking to build things. And when we raised our first round of funding, we went into this entrepreneurial community ecosystem in New York City that sort of brought all these entrepreneurs and thinkers together that were working on things. And I got really enamored by bringing people together and sharing information and building community around it. So I built a company off of that passion called Alley. Alley was an early incubator. It became an early incubator / co-working space in New York City. We grew it nationally with the help of partners. And as a result of that, we did a very large M&A transaction with, a Fortune 50 company. And I exited, that business, sort of like when COVID started to happen. And I was looking for what's my staple? What have I witnessed throughout my career that I can sort of make a dent in the universe? And I was like, wow. I went back into the debt ecosystem, consumer debt, to find out nothing's changed. Over the past 30 years, there's been little to zero innovation for consumers that were falling behind on their bills. So I had an idea that if we were able to build a innovative disruptor that was predicated around helping people that were falling behind on their bills, there is no company doing that right now in the space. There's no app for debt relief. There's no app for when people fall behind on their bills. There's an app to pick you up on any street corner across the world. There's an app to deliver you food, but there's no app that helps you when you fall behind on your bills, the most vulnerable people. And now that we've modernized different industries, like the stockbroking industry. It used to be Charles Schwab and Fidelity, and now it's Robinhood. You have easy access to an app where you can make. Right. So that was the thesis. And, a little over 3 years ago, we took the thesis into a schematic and talked about how we would build the business. We went out to venture capital. We got early stage seed funding. We went from early stage seed funding, onboarded a ton of consumers to the first edition of this idea. We then raised a successful Series A financing 2 years ago, and we've grew the platform. And most recently, we were able to launch it 6 months ago to the public after all the licensing and building that we had to do to get it off the ground. And after 6 months, we got almost 70,000 users, representing over $3 billion of consumer debt. And we're growing, month over month rapidly, enough to where we feel confident that we need to go into our next round of growth capital to expand the business into the future. So I know I said a lot. And in between, I've been on boards at universities. I've written a column in Inc. magazine and Entrepreneur magazine. I've spoken for the U.S. State Department and traveled around the country. I've done all these little cool things that sort of take my time. So being on this is as I mentioned earlier, it's very therapeutic for me because I get to decompress and talk to you rather than get in the nitty gritty and do all this shit. Cause as you can imagine, some of this stuff has real ups and downs to it. It's not just the highlights, it's the messy middle, which I'm happy to get into. But that's my story. That's what I've kind of sort of done up to date.
That's fantastic. Yeah, no, that's good. It's good to get that kind of high level view of what Jason's all about and what you've been through, where you've been. You've been in the trenches.
Still in it. Still in it. Every day, man. Every day.
You're making new trenches.
and dodging bullets.
Dodging bullets. Yeah, that's what I think, anyone that thinks they're going to get into business or entrepreneurship or build businesses or products, services, they think it's going to be just a smooth ride. It's
a very common misconception.
It's a misconception. That's right. So this is, yes. Okay. So let me circle back a little bit. So one of the things I always find fascinating, because before we start building something, the idea has to gel, or it has to come together. It's got to come from somewhere. Where does that idea come from? And you threw some words around like innovative and, disrupting. And you figured out, excuse me, this idea that I went to a Christmas party last night, so my throat's
sounds like you had a good time.
It was a business, yeah, it's a whole thing. But all the stuff that you did before that, though, like all the businesses you were in, originally, the first number before you did Relief, I mean, did you have an exit? Was there an exit? Did you expect to exit when you started the business? Was that the whole idea, to build this thing and then exit and do the next thing until you figure out the thing?
No. I built the business because I loved it. I didn't, okay. I think one of the mistakes that I did with that particular business is I focused on and it's also a positive too, but you have to have a balance when you're building something. It can't just be all about one thing, right? And I think I was so into the consumer journey. I was into the members that were coming into the space, as we called them, because it was a monthly membership. And I wanted everybody to feel awesome. And I think I did a really great job at it, but admittedly, I did a poor job at the future vision and mission of the company, where I really, we caught real fire with what was happening early in New York with the startup ecosystem building. And WeWork is a really great example of a company that, the founder one of the founders had a really solid vision on what the future was going to look like to revolutionize office space in general. And where I was telling this story about community and evangelizing it and bringing great people together, this guy was out, raising $1 billion on what is now a very recognizable brand in every major city across the world. And so I could have done that. I feel like I caught that same fire. When we started the company, WeWork only had one location. So we were on that same level in theory. But but as a result of that, because we were so intertwined with the members and what they were working on and want to provide so much value, we had a lot of large corporations take notice of the types of technology that was being built in the space. And I thought that my job, part of my job, was connecting them to opportunity. So like I bridged the gap between these large organizations that like moved really slow and had all this bureaucratic red tape to like a startup ecosystem that had like no red tape, that were like little speedboats flying around. And they had little to no assets, whereas a large organization has a ton of resources. They just don't know exactly what to do with that. So like I was a bridge, and we worked with like so many different monster companies, and I've been in the room with like crazy CEOs because of this idea was so resonant with these large organizations. We work with, AB InBev, Anheuser-Busch, and through the first beer hackathon where we built technology on top of like beer and distribution of liquor. We had the first fashion tech event with Condé Nast, which is one of the leading, fashion, media companies on the planet. And the people that came into our office, we were just talking about this the other day. It was like, we had presidents, we had dignitaries, we had,
Wow.
CEOs, of monster companies. I mean, and so one of the beautiful, byproducts of that was a deep, meaningful relationship with Verizon, where they wanted to build out a 5G startup ecosystem. And the early stages of what now is the 5G lab was Alley powered by Verizon, where I got to walk around the former CEO, and we got to Lowell, and we got to know each other, and I walked him around our office, which was buzzing with all this activity. And he was like, this is really special. We have to do something bigger. And then the new CEO, Hans, I got to do the same thing. And we built spaces across the country with them in like these old data centers in very interesting places with the help of like very smart people on the commercial real estate side of the business on Verizon. So like that was a very meaningful thing. And that, COVID sort of changed the game a little bit. But I guess going back to your original question, like I could not foresee that at all. I sort of like had blinders on around delivering value for every single person that was there, which isn't such a bad thing. But the lesson is, you should have a balance. You should have a bigger, larger vision that you can work yourself into. And if you're not that person, you have to realize that in yourself and surround yourself around people that can help you execute that. That's a big thing that I learned along the way. So.
No, that's, I was just curious because I've, talked to obviously a lot of people that have done business. I love the fact that you kind of went into, you were all in it. This is meaningful to you. This is something that you were all in. And then maybe an opportunity came along to exit or to move on to the next thing. But it just happened kind of organically. You were just trying to help things along, and that opportunity came along. And I kind of asked that, I'm curious. Now, all these things, these things that you've done during that also, you're doing the best you can. You're building this stuff, but you're starting to also see opportunities or things like the whole debt situation, and how poorly run that was at that stage when you're doing that. And then at some point it starts to gel, and you decide, let's talk a little bit about your app, or your solution. It's not really an app. Is it an app or
it's an app? It's a mobile app.
It's an app. It is an app.
Yep.
Right. So when did that start? Like, when did that all start to gel? Like, when did that idea, like you have all this experience, you've done all these great things, you've hobnobbed with all these amazing CEOs and all these crazy people, which is also an awesome part of the story, because when you're rubbing elbows with those people, you've got to be learning a lot along the way as well. When did that all start to gel? This idea start to gel around doing relief?
Yeah.
Excuse the interruption, but I'd like to take a quick moment to thank the sponsors of the Builders Podcast, Unified Web Design and Unified Plugins. At Unified Web Design, we specialize in crafting custom websites and providing comprehensive design and development solutions to help businesses build a strong online presence. Unified Plugins offers a suite of WordPress tools designed to help you create beautiful websites, enhance functionality, and drive conversions. Explore how these services can elevate your digital projects by visiting unifiedwebdesign.com and unifiedplugins.com. Now back to our program.
So one of the things I was really influenced by at Alley was all of the startups that were building very innovative things in like older businesses, right? We watched Casper, right, take a mattress idea and build, you know, a whole new, like make it an exciting category. And as I was watching that, I thought in the back of my head, like, damn, like I could do that. Like I need to do that because nobody's doing that for people that are falling behind on their bills. Like people need this shit, right? And so that was like the birth of the idea came to me in stages. It's like if while I was knee deep in Alley, I thought obsessively over doing this. It just wasn't the right time, right? And then COVID hit and it was overwhelming. And as we took a step back from our everyday lives and we took a look at things like, wow, like, are we going to survive this thing? This thing was weird, right? Especially in the beginning, you know, before it got all political and everything, it was like, what the fuck is this going to you know,
it's the end of the world.
It's going to slip into my, you know, my house and eat me, you know, what is this thing?
Yeah, right.
So and life paused. And I was like, you know, I really want to do something big and meaningful. I know a lot about this. I'm an expert in the field. I've been through my 10,000 hours of understanding about debt. Nobody can tell me anything I don't know about it, right? Because I live with it, you know, both intimately, business-wise, and helping thousands and thousands of people through it. I know there's a fucking better way, man. You know, and I have that unique exposure to like key developers that care about people. My business partners in this project are so passionate. They're so talented. So I got to choose the best of the best to go along for this journey. I think like something I learned over the years is like, you really have to surround yourself around amazing people. It's a game changer. Like, I'm not just talking about like skills. I'm talking about like people that are positive. Like if you're around negative people, you're fucked, right?
Yeah.
Like
sure.
it is a cancer, right? You know, and along the way, like, you know, the first thing you got to do is like develop like your mission and vision and see like, do you want to do this? You know, like, it can't be just about money. You know, it has to be something deeper because like you're not going to make any money for a long time. People don't know that. Like you look at Mark Zuckerberg and it was like, oh, this, or like any business that had like an exit that was covered in the news. It's like, I love the saying, it took me 10 years to look like an overnight success.
Right. Yeah, you hear that.
It's like there's a whole bunch of shit that you go through to get there. So it has to be big. And I was enamored by this idea. Like I'm obsessed with this idea. Like you know, by the time people are viewing this, if everything goes according to plan, everybody will know what relief is. Like it won't be like an ambiguous thing that's like, oh, it's like, oh, I interviewed that guy. It's not because of the accolades. It's because it's so needed. Millions of people do not have access to simple solutions. They're being manipulated every day. And we built the solution that is super simple, very accessible. And there's, you know, it just does it for you. It's never been done before. So, you know, I know that's what's needed.
Oh yeah, and you can tell you're passionate about this problem in the world, and you want to solve it, and you've got all this experience, and that's how it gels. You know, you see the solution. Let's do this, and then you surrounding yourself with positive people that can, you know, you tell them the vision, and they're on board with that vision, and they get passionate about it, and it's not to interrupt you, but it's not just about
surrounding yourself around positive people. I think the trick is to build the right defense to keep negative people away, because they come in all shapes and forms, right? They could be your family members. They could be friends that you've had for the past 30 years. They could be very successful people that you look up to. They're not you, right? You got to go your own journey. And you have to understand, like, when you leave a conversation, how do you feel? Do you feel energized or deflated? And chances are, if you feel deflated, you're with the wrong people. And some people are so used to it, they don't take note of it. So if you're good at that, you're going to go really far.
No. Yeah, I love that. I was thinking about that Christmas party last night. So this is a group of people that I do business with.
Yeah.
Right. And it was even said at the table, like, this is the best group of people. Everyone's positive. There's no ill will. There's no drama. We just feel like we're in a sweet spot. Like, we found this crew. And you know, I'm happy to be part of it, but that's what you're looking for. You're looking for surround yourself with positive people in business, that can serve as a good platform to build something great. I'm really, and just as a side note, I love that you're solving this problem, because as somebody that's been building smaller businesses for the last few decades, nothing as big as you, but you know, I'm a small business guy. But I've had my ups and downs. I've had time frames where I've been in debt, and I've had to deal with these companies a long time
Yeah.
ago. But
Yeah.
it's
So
little scars are
by
there.
the way, it's secret, Matt. 1 in 3 people have. So, like, by the way, it's all relative. Like, just because I work on big projects doesn't mean I'm a billionaire. I've been bankrupt 3 times in my life. I didn't technically file for bankruptcy, but like, I've been debt collectors calling. You know, even knowing the solutions sometimes doesn't do anything for the problem, right? Sometimes you just gotta go out and make more money. You know, you gotta kick yourself in the ass and do better, do bigger things, make more money. But this problem, it has no boundaries. It crosses classes. All the stigmas are wrong about it. Like, doctors are in the worst debt ever, you know? Mm-hmm. So like, I hear what you're saying. It's just like, you know, people have this misunderstanding that, you know, just because you get into debt, you know, you're like less than or something like that. Or like you fall on a bill. I mean, my view on it is, you know, even though the credit score has been developed to gamify your finances in your life, as a person, you are more than your credit score. And chances are, with the systems that are currently in place in the United States, you are going to find yourself in a negative debt situation. It's by design. It's just a matter of fact. So don't be upset with yourself for falling into the norm. People that are in debt, that have fell behind on the bills, are actually becoming more of the norm every day more than ever. So like, I know that doesn't help people that might be listening to this, or, you know, that are going through the situation directly, but you shouldn't be so hard on yourself as a result of it. You just don't know. I mean, it's crazy. Like, in high school, you learn how to dissect a frog, but you don't learn how to use a credit card. Yeah. You know, like, how many times are you going to use dissecting a frog in your everyday life? Right? Zero.
Right. That's true.
So you use a credit card every friggin' day of your life. You know, why not teach that to kids? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it makes you think, like, what are they doing?
I know. I know what they're doing. I know what they're doing. But anyway, relief is a result of that. You know, it's a byproduct.
And knowing that you will find your way through it, especially, you know, in some way, like, even the debts that I've been in the past, I found my way through it. Here I am, right?
Yes.
But it's hard when you're in it. And it's hard to see. You know, like, it feels like a long way off that you're gonna get out of it, but you will do it if you have a plan and you have the right tools. So you've now surrounded yourself. Let's get back on this story here. So you've surrounded yourself with the right people. You got the right people in the right seats to help you accomplish this dream. What is how did that go? Let's put it
Well,
that way. How did that go? What were the first steps in getting that going? From building it to, the actual, the website or the app itself, or, and what were some of the stumbling blocks that you had to find your way through?
Yeah. Found the right people, like put a wall up on negativity. With the right people, you're able to develop and fine tune the mission and vision, because you're going to have to share this with a lot of people. If you build a business, unless you're the only customer for the business that you're building, you're going to have to share it, sell it, and get some form of support, or get some form of support. So my first steps in anything now, if I go into anything, is developing a clear mission and vision, so I can tell everybody what I'm doing, right? And think about what you're missing. That's part of the equation. So step one, mission and vision. I was able to meet my partners, re-engage with my partners. We've known each other for over a decade, and close our eyes and dream how we'd be able to do this thing. And we built, over the course of several months, a schematic, basically a diagram on how we would tackle this problem. And we went into our lab environment, which is basically studying how the ecosystem works today, validating some of the ideas that I had that existed 20 years ago, and seeing if they're still true today, which we have done. Do discovery, talking to people, getting out of the building, right? Not just building things in a silo, actually doing a study before you take a dime, or we wanted empirical truth. As a startup, if you're starting a business, I think your number one job, past all the logistics, is to get to the truth. And it's much like a science experiment. It's like putting together a formula. You can't be afraid. Right? Many people are afraid, I can't do it. What if I fail? It's part of the process, because in a science experiment, you're going to fail putting two chemicals together to get to the right formula, because it doesn't exist yet. So you gotta keep mixing them. So that's the way I look at things. Yeah. It's all data, right? So that it doesn't necessarily take the emotion completely out of it, because you want to be right away, and you might not be. But it definitely helps frame the mindset of what you need to put together to go into these things. So I look at it much like a science experiment.
Yeah, and you probably have kind of a starting idea about it, right? Your thesis, I kind of, this is my idea of what we want to do. But then when you start presenting it to people, that probably it morphs. Changes.
Yes, absolutely. You go in, you have to have an agile mindset to the discovery process. But ultimately, I think the best cause of action for me is to find out what is the biggest problem we need to solve to move forward. Out of this whole ecosystem, can we identify the one problem? Is it the tech? Is it that difficult to build? Is it business development? Overcoming massive challenges to get the right people in a room? Is it customer acquisition costs? Right? Can I make a margin that could support a growth style type of business? So for us, we looked at all that. After interviewing professionals in the space, consumers that needed help, debt buyers, debt collectors, thousands and thousands of hours of just learning and putting the time in to kind of understand. Our thesis was that because of the way that the ecosystem is manipulated, and because of the old style of 4:00 in the morning television commercials that scare people into these programs, the customer acquisition costs were wildly expensive. So we were like, okay, if we built a digital brand that speaks to digital natives, that is in the right culture, that they're not allergic. And think about it, it's common sense when you look back, but millennials and under, they don't even like to call their significant others on the telephone. Why would they want to call your company? They want an app, right? They want to feel connected. Just like they don't want to call a car company to pick them up. They want to click it. They want Uber, right?
Yeah.
So the same thesis was like, what would that do to customer acquisition costs? Because customer acquisition costs are a barometer for the value. If you have very high customer acquisition costs, then you're going to have to charge a lot of money.
Why were they high?
Because the people are allergic to doing business with fucking shysters and like people that
so it's hard to just get people on
the phone.
And
there's a lot of money in the space. Yeah. So like all of these firms that exist are like fighting over this business. So like there's sales offices set up across the United States with the largest debt companies in the world, like putting all their money into customer acquisition, which rises the cost of acquisition, right?
Sure.
So like, and they're not doing anything different than they were, 20 or 30 years ago. So the whole nature of the way they set up these monster businesses is archaic, and they've gotten used to paying $1,000 for a person. But the byproduct of that is they have to charge people a ton of money. So our target was to get people under $50. And we hit 5.
Wow.
And then we were like, all right, we got something really fucking special here.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah, we got
you're just eliminating a lot of the friction and by having this app.
Yeah, but it's not just about the friction. It is. It's seamless. We built all the technology that automates something that is completely new in the ecosystem. Nobody's automated this for users and so on and so forth. So we had to build a tech stack to be able to support that. But more than anything else, we're showing people that you don't need to be manipulated. You don't need a ton of money to get help. It's easy. It's simple. Here it is in app form. You're used to doing this with every part of your life. Now have it going through this situation. And that cultural effect of that translates to customer acquisition costs being so low.
Wow. Nice. So can you tell me, just circle back a tiny bit. So I've talked to a lot of people that have developed products and services, and they want to validate that idea or take it out to the world. You're talking about going to the consumer or to whoever out there that can give you the feedback you need to make a decision about this idea, or to change it, improve it, or whatever. How do you find, like, what is that? I need to go out. I got an idea. Where are you going? Who are these people?
Yeah.
How do you acquire those people? Like, you just go out on the street, walk down the street and walk up to people?
It could be. It depends on the type of business. Like throughout my career, I've raised money in 3 major categories, aside from like friends and family and things like angel investors, which are, you have like, 3 type of institutional investors, out there, generally speaking, and you could break them down, in subcategories. But there's venture capital, which are like, let's swing for the fences, high growth, high yield, very volatile. If they're right, it's going to be at least $1 billion company. You have private equity. That's a lot more pragmatic. That's like, if I put $1 in, I'm going to want to see $1 back. And then you have, M&A, large corporations that might have something like a double bottom line. As long as it helps their core business, they'll invest in it, right? Even if it's not like profitable or so on and so forth, i.e., big example of that is like Facebook buying Instagram, right? So, I've done them all, right? And, every single one of those types of transactions were handled differently, right? And it really depends on what you're trying to build, right? If you're trying to open up a candy store and you need money, traditionally speaking, unless you have a background in scaling national candy stores, you're going to have to find the capital internally, right? You're going to have to find people that believe in you. if you have some level of sort of like network and experience, that type of project, unless it's like on the internet and it's high growth, typically that has a tenor of private equity, right? And you would go into these private equity firms, you, as a founder, it's your job to figure it out, right? Like, you know, I'm not going to give you the specific formula for your business. That's part of the process of doing what you do. But these are the things that you think about when you're a founder in these type of spaces. So a private equity business that has a more tenor to open up like real estate and understand like real estate and how those transactions work, you'd seek out investors, put together your pitch material, put together your thesis, your business plan, and you present it, right? And then you're the founder. You got to find these people. It's hard. Congratulations.
Start Googling.
Not everybody's doing it, right? Yeah. Look, there's a million different resources with the advent of the internet where you could look things up. You got to figure it out and surround yourself around people. And, you know, start with the communities that want to get together, right? There are networks and meetups that people in the space are part of. Like, there's no excuse anymore, right? And you can't be like, tell me how to do. I hate that shit. When a founder comes to you, tell me how to do it. It's like, no way. That's the whole job, right? Are you like,
That's part of
you
it.
know, I'm not founding your company, but, you know, I will tell you from a Socratic perspective that this is your job. And there's no excuse if you really want to do it, right? It's out there. So that's more like a private equity. For this particular project with the relief, it was venture capital all the way. You know, we needed to raise a lot of money. We're not going to make profit for a long time. There is no brand that's doing this. We need to be in every household. This has the potential of becoming a publicly traded company. We need to handle that accordingly. So I designed the company in that tenor. I have followed all of the makings and obviously brought them home and customized them to what we're doing to do those steps. And I learned that along the way. I didn't go to business school. You know, I don't have a degree in any of this stuff. I went out and I did it. You know, there's literally no excuse why you can't do this yourself. You just have to have a lot of grit. You got to prepare yourself, and you got to put yourself you got to surround yourself around the right people and get rid of all the negative people out of your life and fucking go for it.
And it seems like, no doubt, the foundation though is really having what you're doing, what your vision is dialed in,
totally.
and so you can pitch it. So you can go out there, you can
totally
tell the world about it, and then taking action and getting out there and doing it. Yeah, so there's no blueprint that anybody that works for everybody. One size fits all. Here you go. This is how you do it. Go out. You just start making those connections. You start connecting with people and maybe Googling, maybe a little of this, maybe a little bit. Just talking to people in your space, because every space is a little bit different.
When I started my first business, there was no communities around people that are building businesses. In every single city in the world, there is some sort of entrepreneurial hub that's happening, right? It's not just, you can Google it, but you could just go to a co-working space and work at it.
Yeah.
You know, invest in yourself and in bringing great people that are like-minded around you. There is no excuse.
Nice. So, you know, we, like, I feel like I could talk to you about this for hours. So let's start to land this ship though. So you're surrounded yourself with awesome people, positive people. You're blocking the negatives. Mm-hmm. You're going out there getting venture capital. That whole thing's going on. You got a nice foundation. You got a great vision. You're passionate about what you're doing. This is something you want to solve in the world, and you got people on board with that. How's the building been from there? Let's condense the rest of it. Have you run into any other challenges? Anything else that that you've learned in the last few years building this thing?
Every day, man. You know, building.
let's choose like 2 or 3 years.
I mean, you know, I think the mindset is everything, right? Because you have to prepare yourself. Because like one day is going to be the best day of your life, directly followed by the worst day of your life. And like, you know, you have to mentally prepare yourself for that. That's the number one thing I teach a class on entrepreneurship. It's called the entrepreneurial mindset. That's the one thing that you have to know right away. This is going to be a bumpy friggin' ride. It is not easy. Prepare yourself. Unlike what the media tends to look at it as. So that's number one. That's the biggest lesson to me that's out there. The second thing is, look, when you treat it like an experiment, and when you put all the logistics and the nuances together, there is one common trait that every single successful entrepreneur shares. They did not stop. Everything else is different. The tenor of the business, the way they raise capital, the air that they breathe when they woke up in the morning, the regions that they're in, the shit that they face, whatever it is, they did not stop.
Brilliant. Yeah. We could stop it right on that.
Well, whatever you want to do. Whatever you want to do.
That's brilliant. No, I think about, even in the context of, I've been building this agency for 6 years. We're built. But we've had our ups and downs as a web design agency. And 2024 has been pretty hardcore. It's been a kind of a crazy year in a lot of different ways. But I was just talking to a friend of mine in business, and he's having a rough year too. I said, you know what though? You know who you are. You know what you're doing. You got your vision. You nothing that's happening is going to change that. You've figured this is like your identity. And I gave him the example. It's kind of a weird example, but Picasso. If you're into art, there's a quote out there from Picasso who's like, he was, I don't know. He basically, he was going to become an artist, but instead of becoming an artist, he became Picasso. He became that thing. That's how I interpret that. Like you become this thing. So no matter what happens, all the ups and downs and the debts and the coming out of that debt or having the good days and bad days, you're Picasso. This is your thing, and you'll find your way through it. And but it's not going to be an easy ride.
No, there's something that I learned. I'm still learning that I'm actually proactively trying to change within myself, which is like helping me with my bigger vision, which is sort of like, doing chores, like washing dishes or like vacuuming the floor or like just fixing something because I'm not handy at all and I don't clean and I hate it and I need like help and like to really enjoy these moments, to like figure out like in the nook like how to get like grace and how to get joy. And like honestly what I noticed is like if you could just find the joy out of the process, everything becomes better. The dishes are cleaner, the cables get better put together, and your business works better. And so the Japanese have a book that, and I think it's a whole philosophy, and I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation of it, but it's called Ikigai, I believe. And please, if anybody,
I've heard of this. I think I've talked to.
I think it's so important because, and even if you're not going to pick up a book like that or like dive into it, just know that if you can enjoy the journey, the result is always going to be good because you're enjoying the journey along the way. Because there's so many different factors that make the result variable. It's not just success isn't binary. It's not like, oh, if you do these steps, you're going to get there. So much shit has to work out for you to be successful. So you can't hang your hat on just that.
Yeah. Now, but you gotta enjoying what you're doing. You gotta have the passion for it. You gotta have this vision that you're all in. And like Picasso, I keep going back to that. And the reason why it just resonates with me is because no matter what happens, no matter where I am today, like in a year, 2 years, I'll look back at it and be like, I got through that. I knew I would. I'm just like, we'll get through it because we're this thing.
You said it.
Yeah. But anyway, so, Jason, I appreciate you being on the show today and sharing your journey and the building process. There's a lot to building. We got a slice of it, a little bit of an image of it, but it's really, really good stuff. And wish you all the best. There's a lot of people out there that are in debt. And like you said, I don't think it's getting better. So I'm looking forward to seeing relief everywhere.
Me too.
So,
Me too. People need it. It's been a pleasure, Matt. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Until next time.
Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Builders Podcast. One more quick note about our sponsors. At Unified Web Design, we're passionate about doing better together, partnering with agencies and businesses to deliver exceptional web design, development, and ongoing support. And Unified Plugins offers tools to take your WordPress projects to the next level, helping you build beautiful websites, enhance functionality, and drive more conversions. If you haven't already, subscribe or follow to stay updated on future episodes. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, sharing it with somebody who might benefit helps us grow this amazing community. Until next time, keep building with intention and creativity.